the ancient mystery of the 50,000-man army that vanished. They marched into the desert with swords gleaming in the sun, their banners fluttering like the wings of eagles in the searing Egyptian wind. 50,000 men. An entire army. And then, nothing. No battle. No survivors. Not a single broken spear or sun-bleached bone left behind. Just silence. It is one of the most baffling disappearances in the history of the ancient world. A mystery so enduring, so haunting, that even Herodotus, the so-called father of history, wrote of it with an almost mystical reverence. An army that simply evaporated, swallowed whole by the sands of time. But who were these men? What were they doing in the unforgiving belly of the Sahara? And how does an entire force of trained soldiers vanish without leaving behind a trace? This is the tale of the lost army of Cambyses II, a story buried for over 2,000 years, a story that begins not with their disappearance, but with a king's pride. Cambyses II, son of the great Persian emperor Cyrus the Great, ruled the Achaemenid Empire with fire and fury. He was ambitious, volatile, and obsessed with completing his father's conquests. In 525 BCE, Cambyses stood at the apex of power with a stunning victory against Egypt's pharaoh Psamtik III. The Persian Empire now stretched from the Indus Valley to the Nile. But for Cambyses, conquest was a thirst that couldn't be quenched. Legend has it that he looked to the distant west, where the oasis oracle of Amun at Siwa sat in the middle of the Libyan desert, a sacred site that even Alexander the Great would later seek out. The priests there, guardians of ancient wisdom, had refused to acknowledge Cambyses as the rightful king of Egypt. Some say they laughed at him, others say they issued a prophecy foretelling his downfall. Either way, it was an insult the king could not abide. He ordered an army 50,000 strong to march across the western desert and raze the oracle to the ground. A bold move, a dangerous one, and perhaps a fatal one. Herodotus, writing about 75 years later, tells us that the army set off from Thebes, heading west into the desert, toward the oasis of Siwa. After a 7-day march, they reached the oasis of Karga, and then they were never seen again. According to Herodotus, a great wind arose, a sandstorm came upon them, burying them completely, and just like that, 50,000 men, gone. It sounds like a myth, a parable meant to showcase the dangers of hubris, but what if it's more than a legend? For centuries, the tale of Cambyses' army was dismissed as apocryphal, a fanciful yarn spun by a Greek historian with a flair for the dramatic. And yet, clues have emerged, scattered like breadcrumbs in the sands of the western desert. In the late 20th century, two Italian brothers, Angelo and Alfredo Castiglioni, set out to investigate the mystery. They weren't just scholars, they were filmmakers, explorers, obsessed with ancient secrets. Their expeditions into the western desert led them to a remote area southwest of the Siwa oasis, where they claimed to discover a collection of objects buried in the sand. Among the finds, bronze arrowheads, fragments of textiles, a dagger, human bones, and what appeared to be remnants of Persian-style equipment. These weren't scattered by chance. They were located along an ancient caravan route. The Castiglionis believed this could be the trail of Cambyses' lost army. Their findings were featured in a 2002 National Geographic documentary titled The Lost Army of Cambyses. It reignited global fascination with the mystery. Were these the long-buried clues to Herodotus' story? Had the desert finally begun to speak? But skepticism remained. Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities reviewed the evidence and offered no formal recognition. Also, critics argued that the artifacts could have belonged to other trade caravans or nomadic groups that passed through the area centuries later. No definitive proof has yet linked the discoveries to Cambyses' doomed expedition. Still, The sands whispered secrets, and for those who listened closely, patterns began to emerge. One theory suggests that the army never made it as far as Siwa at all. The Libyan desert is a brutal crucible of heat and mirage. Even today, with modern equipment and satellite navigation, crossing it is no simple feat. In ancient times, it would have been a nightmare of blinding sun and endless dunes. With limited water supplies, no reliable maps, and possibly under attack from desert tribes, the army may have simply succumbed to the elements one dust-choked step at a time. Others propose that the disappearance wasn't entirely natural. Could they have been ambushed, lured into the desert and slaughtered? Some scholars point to the nomadic Garamantas, fierce desert warriors who knew the land intimately, and may have seen the Persian force as invaders. But that theory raises its own questions. Where are the remains? 50,000 corpses do not vanish without a trace, not unless something else happened. Something more elemental. And here, we return to the sands. The Libyan desert is one of the driest, harshest places on Earth. It's not just hot, it's hostile. Entire caravans have disappeared in sandstorms that rise without warning and bury everything in their path. The so-called Hamzin winds, named after the Arabic word for 50, are infamous for blowing for 50 days straight, turning the air to fire and the ground to waves. A sandstorm of sufficient ferocity could have enveloped the Persian army in minutes. Without shelter, without water, and with no way to navigate, they might have turned on each other in panic. Some could have suffocated. Others may have wandered, delirious, until they dropped from exhaustion. In that scenario, their bodies would have been quickly entombed by shifting dunes. The desert doesn't just kill, it also erases. But there is a darker theory still. What if the army never existed? Not in the way we think. What if Herodotus was repeating a story designed to hide something more sinister? Some suggest the entire tale was a cover-up, a way for Cambyses to explain the loss of a massive military expedition without admitting to internal revolt or catastrophic failure. After all, Cambyses was not a stable ruler. His reign was marked by erratic decisions, cruelty, and paranoia. He is said to have killed his own brother, Smerdis, and later hallucinated a revolt so vividly that it inspired a real one. Was the Lost Army a convenient fiction, a way to bury his embarrassment under literal sand? Even modern historians can't agree. Some, like Olaf Kapper of Leiden University, argue that the entire Siwa expedition was a fabrication meant to distract from an internal coup. Cation Mail believes that a rival named Pertubastis III may have led a rebellion while Cambyses was away, and later destroyed the records of his own defeat. In this version, the Lost Army wasn't lost to nature, but to politics. But not all are convinced. In 2020, new satellite imagery and radar technology began revealing ancient paths through the desert trails, possibly used by ancient armies and caravans. These so-called desert highways show signs of human activity in areas previously thought uninhabitable. Could they lead us to the bones of the lost army? And if they do, what will we find? A mass grave beneath the dunes? Relics of forgotten armor, bleached white and brittle with age? Or perhaps nothing at all, just sand and sky, and the ghost of a mystery? The story of the Lost Army persists because it lives in the place where myth and memory intertwine. It is a tale of ambition and arrogance, of men swallowed by the very land they sought to conquer. And in that, it echoes forward through history. Empires rise and fall, kings declare war, soldiers march. And sometimes, they don't come back. Even now, the desert keeps its secrets. The wind howls across the empty plains, reshaping dunes that may have lain undisturbed for millennia. Somewhere out there, perhaps beneath your very footsteps, the bones of 50,000 men may lie silent, waiting for the sun to uncover them again. Or maybe they never existed at all. maybe the real mystery isn't in the sand, but in the story. A story told by a Greek historian writing secondhand. A story retold through centuries of speculation and half-truths. A story that shows us not just how much we've forgotten, but how much we long to remember. Because in the end, history isn't just about what happened. It's about what we believe happened. And somewhere, between truth and tale, between wind and dune, the army of Cambyses marches still, lost, but never forgotten. So what do you think? Was there truly a lost army swallowed by the desert winds? Or was it an embellished tale crafted by Herodotus, shaped by time, and passed down through centuries of speculation? Could the sands of Egypt really erase 50,000 men? Or are we chasing a myth dressed as memory? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you love diving into the shadows of history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us again for more untold legends, right here on Obscura Historia.